Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after 5-1 loss by the Winnipeg Jets. And I got to be honest, up front here, this is going to be a weird one to break down. The reason it's going to be a weird one for me to break down is because I couldn't have a more polar opposite view of this game by Scott Arniel. So why don't you hop into the Toyota? Let's take a drive and talk about it on the Jim Pattison Toyota opening drive. Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive. Okay, just so we know, for the people who are watching, I think it's probably spread and made the rounds by now, but kind of a scathing review of the game by Scott Arniel, who talked about his team and suggested that it was a pond hockey game kind of for the first two periods, and then they lost control of it in the third period. I'm not disagreeing they lost control of it in the third period, but the pond hockey game assessment is not what I saw at all. Now, before we get going on this, I want to make sure that everyone understands. Yes, I realize I'm going against the thoughts of a President's Trophy winning coach here with this, and a guy who gets paid a lot of money to assess hockey games and break them down. And I know that I'm going in an entirely different direction than that guy. I understand that. I'm not for a second trying to say that I know more than Scott Arniel or anything like that. This is just one of those times where his view is going to be very, very different than mine, because I didn't see that at all. And not that I saw the game and thought, wow, this is a great way to go. Quite the opposite. What I did see is a continuation of what we saw from the Winnipeg Jets against the Florida Panthers. Like, to me, this is just periods, I guess if you want to count the overtime period against Florida as the fourth period, this is periods 5, 6, continuation of that exact game that they were playing. And I described it. I don't think I actually have this right. I went and I looked at what a zero sum means. I've been trying to describe it as just a way where the Jets are just basically kind of staying even at all points. This, to me, looks like Jets hockey that for the longest time, it had been 3 games or so, whatever it was, a number of periods of hockey, 10 periods of hockey or something like that, that the Jets had gone without a 5-on-5 goal. They finally get one in this game here. But what I've been seeing from the Winnipeg Jets is a team playing a game that has been not the most exciting variety of scoring. What it looks like to me is a game plan by the Winnipeg Jets, who realize that they don't have the ability to score that the way that they did in the past. So they're going to try and win 0-0. And they're going to go out and they're going to grind these games down to low event hockey. It's what we saw in the first 2 periods of this game. It's what we saw in the previous 3 periods against the Florida Panthers. It's what we saw basically against the St. Louis Blues, where outside of the Jets jumping up and getting two goals in the 4-minute power play, the double minor power play scored in that game, there's really not a lot going on outside of that. I see the Winnipeg Jets trying to win games 0-0. And when I say that, what I mean is the Jets look to me just to being a team that's not trying to generate a ton of offense. They're playing not to make mistakes and playing hopefully that the other team at some point will make a mistake, or a bounce will go the Jets' way, or they'll get, a power play and maybe capitalize on the power play. And that's how they're going to get by. And I get it. I get that we've seen enough evidence of the Winnipeg Jets scoring or inability to score or get depth scoring this year that you would go down that path. I understand that. It seems to me this is how the Winnipeg Jets have chosen to try and earn their way back into this season, is to just make every single game a battle of attrition that hopefully opens up in your favor, the way some of the games did earlier on in this, stretch of hockey. But to me, I don't know. Playing a game to just basically hope that the other team makes a mistake and then sit on it after that, I think is a dangerous game to play. I think we saw why. You take a look, the Jets go, they grind, they get a goal. Well, in the end, they're doing a good job, I thought, for the vast majority of this game, keeping the traffic away from Connor Hellebuck, not allowing really great shots. But sometimes a team is just going to grind one into the back of the net, and that's exactly what the the Detroit Red Wings do. And then we see them come out afterwards and they get a bounce, right? And so now all of a sudden the puck bounces up in the air, goes off Connor Hellebuck's back, it's into the back of the net. That I think is the third goal of the game. But bounces can go both ways, and playing to basically draw to a stalemate and hope that the bounces go your way is doing one of two things. You're trying to play teams that are mistake prone, and hopefully it'll work out for you. And I think that may have worked out in some of their earlier games in this stretch of hockey. But doing that tonight against a team like this, and basically, in my opinion, not going out to generate much in the way of offense, it's a coin flip at best. You're basically putting yourself in a situation where you flip the coin. It may fall your way, may not fall your way. Fell their way to the degree of getting a point in their last game against the Florida Panthers. But all the people out there who keep getting a hold of me and saying, well, the St. Louis Blues did it in 2019. This isn't how the St. Louis Blues did it. The St. Louis Blues didn't turn it into let's make sure nobody scores, and then we'll hopefully get enough bounces to get by here. This, to me, is the Winnipeg Jets trying to play hockey that gets them better results than what they got, but they're not going out to play winning hockey. And the problem with that is I don't think it's good enough to get you to the playoffs, which I've told you it's not happening, But what it is good enough to do is it's good enough to get you to grind, kind of do what they've said they've been trying to do, is catch the next team ahead of them, And what's going to happen here, it looks fairly obvious to me, is the Winnipeg Jets are going to use this game and they're going to grind, and it's not going to be like, basically you want a game plan that says we're going to do this and we're going to get in with this game plan and we really believe in this team and we're going to go win the playoffs with this. No one's winning the playoffs with this game. This score nothing, do nothing, nobody gets shots, nothing happens, and maybe we grind our way to the playoffs, and then if it's all about just getting over the playoff line, okay, fine, you succeeded maybe, but you're not going anywhere with this kind of game. And then you have to kind of ask yourself, well, what are you achieving with this kind of game? And all I'm seeing them achieve is slowly catching the likes of, we saw them catch the Calgary Flames, the Vancouver Canucks, so on and so forth. Probably going to catch a team like the Rangers with this. And all you're going to do, in my opinion, is kind of grind your way into the mushy middle where you move further and further and further away from a good draft pick, the kind of draft pick that could change the future of this team potentially. To me, it's a lot of work, a lot of grind. And what's the outcome for? To me, I see Mark Scheifele's line that their offense has been stymied the last couple of games because they're playing like this. At least before this, they were getting, some excitement out of that line there. But Jets are playing better defensively. Maybe this is the process of them buttoning down defensively, and then they'll slowly add offense to it. Maybe they get there in time to turn this around and be an 800-point percentage team and get there. But I don't see it. And what I do see is the Jets have lost 4 of their last 5 games. Are they doing it on a razor's edge? Yes, they are. But this, to me, this is the path to the mushy middle. And it is not at all, in my mind, pond hockey, as it was suggested by Scott Arniel. That was a really, really tightly checked game for the first 2 periods. Tightly checked to the point that I didn't even think that the Jets were trying to play winning hockey. They were just trying to play so that no one anywhere got anything into the back of the net. Worked for the first 2 periods. But when it goes against you and the bounce goes to the other team first, now you find yourself in a lot of trouble. And that's what I saw happen to the Winnipeg Jets tonight. That's my take on the whole thing in the opening drive. So let's pull over and get out and just talk about Toyota. And that this January, it's time to Toyota. Jim Pattison, Toyota on Regent. Finance the new 2026 BZ XLE all-electric SUV from $158 weekly for 60 months at 1.49% with $5,599 down payment. But hurry, the offer ends February 2nd. Visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent for a test drive today. Okay, that's it for me. Not for the entire show, but it's it for me blathering on at this moment. And we're going to bring in a guy who can do a little blathering of his own. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the... All right, Kenny. Once again, I'm ready to do some Flame and Comfort hot take action right out of the gate here. We've got Palmer Lane, I think is what it says here. It says the team is not just bad, they are boring and bad. And this is this is what I worry about here. I've got so many people sending me messages about the boring brand of hockey that's being played here, the lack of 5-on-5 goals. And I gotta say, Cole Koepke gets a goal here tonight. And part of this is, go to the net, do the right things, you're going to get the bounces. But part of this is also the fact that a puck bounces off of Cole Koepke and lands in a spot where he's got access to it. There's an element of luck to that allows him to get the puck past John Gibson in this game. And outside of that, I didn't see a lot of anything generated by the Jets on this night. And I can understand why someone would look at this and say, this is bad because they didn't win. Now they've lost 4 of 5 games, and it definitely doesn't make their outlook look very good. But on the way there, you're not seeing Mark Scheifele do the things that Mark Scheifele does. You're not seeing, anything kind of open up. This is just very, very tight-knit hockey, counter to what their coach said here tonight. But I agree with this. I do think I usually don't say these kind of things when I'm analyzing games, but that was a boring game for a large chunk of that game. And the last game against the Florida Panthers was a boring game too. The last number of games here for people showing up at the Canada Life Center have not given a lot of reason to get enthused or excited or into the game. And that's why I've got Palmer Lane 8-9-2-4 winning the Flame and Comfort hot take of the game already this early into the show. And that, of course, is brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved to 1465 St. James Street. You'll find when you get there, it's one of the most impressive showrooms in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside, folks. You can visit Flame and Comfort. They will take care of it for you. Ken, I had promised to stop blathering, and then I went and I blathered on for another couple of minutes. So time for you to take the floor.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to ask a little bit more of a pointed question here, and your response to what you saw and if it aligned with what Scott Arniel saw in maybe one of the harshest takedowns of his team we've ever seen from a Winnipeg Jets coach post-game.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think that most definitions for people when they think of pond hockey, they think of wide open, inspired play. I think what Scott Arniel was talking about in this version of pond hockey was more of the pleasure skating variety. That I think is what he meant. I don't think he meant that it wasn't, a wide open affair. I mean,
what do you mean by pleasure skating?
What I'm saying is, sorry, what he said, the full quote, we were looking for a pond hockey. Don't get hit. Don't hit anybody. Just play an easy, soft game. That's what I mean. I don't mean it was pond hockey in the sense where you and I love pond hockey because you get to go out against, the older guys and you're competing your behind off. I think he meant it was like just it was too casual a game. Like the intensity and urgency wasn't there. That's my interpretation of the quote about pond hockey. The next part of that quote was, we are fighting for our lives and we go out there and lay that egg. So to me, that was a coach who didn't think his team was playing a hard enough game or making it hard enough on their opponent. That's my interpretation of it.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm just going to counter to that. Like,
no problem. That's what I think that's what I think he means. And then he said it wasn't good enough. I mean,
it's not like they got ground out in front of their own net. Like if it's a non-contact game, I'm not seeing examples of them getting overwhelmed physically in that game.
Well, that's what he said. Don't get hit either. He said, don't hit or get hit.
I don't know. Like what we watched in that game and what we had going over in the screens play after play was every time a Red Wing got the play or got the puck, there was a Jet there for the first 2 periods to snuff it out, right? Like they abandoned, in my mind, the idea of moving down the ice and playing offense to just put a wet blanket over anything that happened in that game. Now, did it lead to massive bombastic hits? I don't think so, but I didn't think there was a lack of contact or engagement by the Jets players when it came to checking. I didn't think they looked to be avoiding contact or avoiding getting hit. Like I know, I know you're trying to find a different definition for pond hockey, and maybe what he's saying, and maybe what I'm missing here, because the one thing that I certainly think is the Winnipeg Jets did almost nothing to generate offense on that night. Maybe that's what he's talking about, but and maybe it's the wrong example that he's using, but pond hockey would usually suggest it was a team that was just out there for a light skate, trying to be nothing but offense. There was nothing about the Jets that seemed to be offensive on that night, and I honestly don't think they lacked anything in the grind. I think they lacked it all in creativity and offensive drive. But I don't know. How did he go from loving their game against the Florida Panthers, which I do not see that big of a difference between in the style of game that was played in this game compared to that game? How do we go from him loving that game to him thinking that was pond hockey?
Yeah, I mean, I think they were similar game, but I don't think it was as little space available because of the way that Florida checked the other day. And the Jets did a good job of counterpunching in a lot of that part of that game. Again, I don't think they were super loose defensively, but I mean, the second Comfort goal is on an odd man rush, which is, that was an example of, the play that didn't kind of go their way. And a team can't afford to be giving up a lot of odd man rushes based on their lack of offense, as you mentioned. I mean, again, I don't know if he's more disappointed with the lack of generation or the lack of checking. And I agree. I don't think this was a casual effort. And like, Jets know what is at stake. I just didn't see a ton of urgency, honestly, in this game. Did you? I mean, I think that was what Arniel had his biggest issue with.
So in that respect, I would say that, and I would say that maybe Scott Arniel feels that this should be leading to more offense. I think that this is systematic play that is okay. So if we go back to the idea of what I've said in the past, I don't think the Winnipeg Jets can play the style of game that they did last year. That style of game was crammed so much down your throat, defense through it being absolutely on top of you over and over again. And when you got there fast, it created turnovers ended up in the back of the net. I think that who's that saying hi behind
Jimmy
you?
Toth.
Jimmy Toth jumping into the play.
I was told there'd be beer here.
Oh my goodness! Oh,
that's the wrong show.
He's going to get assessed for a too many men penalty there if he keeps that up. I think what we are seeing here right now is a Winnipeg Jets team that does not have the speed to do what it did last year, but they've tweaked the system to be almost as suffocating defensively, but without the option for offense. So maybe I'm missing something, and this could be it. It could be that Scott Arniel would listen to me saying this and say, no, that's BS. This team can still generate offense off this, and that's why I'm mad. They're not taking that next step to generate the offense off of it. And if that's what he's suggesting, I can see that. But that belies the comments he made last game, Ken, where it was a 1-1 game against the Florida Panthers after a 2-1 game essentially against the Blues the game before, where they really didn't generate much at all, where they're not getting a lot of shots, where there's ridiculously low volume going to the net. This to me is an exact continuation of those last two games without the late goal to tie things up in the case of the Florida Panthers, and without the power play success that won them the game against the Blues. But I mean, it's not like they generated a whole bunch of offense last game, and it's not like they generated a whole bunch of offense the game before. So if the disconnect here is that they're not doing enough to create offense, I don't know then why he was so happy with their last game where they did not generate much in the way of offense, and here tonight where it just ends up being a bit of a worse result.
I mean, for me, all they gave up against Florida was the face-off play, though, right? It's a one-timer from Bennett on a draw. They actually they didn't win it, but they had a chance.
I didn't think they gave up a lot tonight either.
Right, but 2 of the goals out of the 5 are odd man rush goals. So I think that's the frustration. I mean, the Finney set up to Confer is an odd man rush, and then the last goal is a 2-on-1 where, it just, I'm not saying it wasn't played properly, but, and again, after you give up an empty net goal, I think that was more deflation. But again, when Dylan DeMello's assessment was the Jets weren't hard enough on the Red Wings around the net, right? I mean, that the Lucas Raymond goal is a great example. It's a stuff play where in a perfect world, if you're defending, you prevent that wraparound from even happening, right? So I don't know.
I guess it's
and Sean,
it's a lucky bounce off his
first
back, and the previous one is a almost no space goal by JT Compher that goes off the pad, off the post, barely makes it in, and he gets absolutely erased by
Right.
Luke Shen on the play. Like I
but
do
it's the
not
play in
see
the
a
first
wide
place. He
open
wasn't
guy
covered
standing
though.
around.
Well, Comfort wasn't covered initially, which is why he got the first shot.
I mean,
off.
there's going to be breakdowns, but Ken, this is not an example of a bunch of guys standing around, not paying attention, wide open play.
Right.
This is that I don't know if he's using the right analogy, or I don't know if I don't know if he's talking very specifically about an element of the game that is missing. But to me, Ken, regardless of how he's describing it, I see no difference between this game and the game against the Florida Panthers, other than the fact that the Detroit got the lead. Jets started pushing back the way they did the last game, and then they got that third goal. And that's why I think it's a dangerous game to play when you're trying to win by a razor's edge and win 2-1 with a mistake on the other end of things. If another bounce goes your way, now you can't get back into it because you're not able to generate 5-on-5 goals. You haven't been able to for a long time, and now you're down 3-1, and the task seems mammoth and near impossible.
Yeah, I mean, in that game, we saw one cycle shift from the Taves line where, Taves set up Velarde in the slot, right? I mean, for me, there wasn't a lot of sustained offense, and I'm guessing that's
wasn't last game either. They had
right, but Sean, that's the point. It's not sustainable.
Periods.
It's not sustainable for a team that still thinks that they're in the race, right? That's the issue. I mean, like hanging around is not good enough for the Jets.
Exactly. Okay, there you go.
So that's what I'm saying. That's why he's mad about it.
Yeah. But they were hanging around last game, and he loved that game. What's the difference between the two games? What's the difference between him loving what they did against the Florida Panthers, where they had, 10 shots after 2 periods, and it turns out that they get a point out of it, and tonight, where basically it's a 1-1 game going into the third, and then a little bit of a lucky bounce off the back of the goaltender goes into the net, but now you don't have a team capable of putting in 2 goals to come back into it because your team doesn't score at 5-on-5. And let's be honest, if you're okay with the play that they had against the Blues, which he was, where they generated almost nothing offensively, and okay with the game against the Florida Panthers, which he was, where they generated almost nothing offensively, why would you be upset when your team now is in this flow where they're generating nothing offensively?
Well, it's hard to win when you're not generating offensively. So
agreed. But he was happy with it the last previous.
Well, happy because they fought back and one of the games and came back from 1-0 down in the other game. I mean, tonight they had the lead and didn't hold it, and then didn't generate anything after that. I think that's where the frustration is for him. I think I can't speak for him. And Sean, I mean, I understand your point is that if you'd been able to ask a follow-up, we might have had a little bit more clarity, right? But Scott was done talking after 68 seconds today. Well, obviously frustrated, said a lot in a small amount of time, but it still left some things open to interpretation.
Yeah, and let's make something clear. I don't blame him for that. That was a media dropping the ball today, including me, not you, Ken, because you asked the first 3 questions. The secondary mic was behind me, in the row behind me.
Right.
I had thought someone had picked it up to ask the question. Clearly, there was an intimidation factor that existed there with Scott being as hot as he was. So when I turned to see that no one was asking a question and made a reach for the mic, it was in that moment that Scott Arniel said thank you and left, which he has every right to do if you're not prepared. So I'll take you don't have to take anything, Ken, because there would not have been a post game without you asking the 3 questions that you asked. I should have been more on the ball. I thought someone had it. They didn't, but I should have been looking to make sure. But there should have been follow-up questions to that. I had follow-up questions so that I did get them in time. And I understand that this is a case today where the media, including myself, failed the fan base because there was more to be said there and more to be asked.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to the Rick Bowness classic, right? When honestly, I'm reaching back to grab the mic after Jeff Hamilton asked the first couple questions to Rick Bowness in the no pushback presser, but Rick was already walking off the stage where, again, there was a little bit of a stunned response to what was said. Again, I expected Scott Arniel to be disappointed, but I mean, those are pretty pointed comments. And The fact he thought that it was one of the worst games in the last month, and he was visibly upset with what he saw. Right? I mean, that's
well. So you're trying to give, like, you're giving people an out, and what I'm saying is, Ken, you did a good enough job that there is no out for the rest of the media, because you absorbed the shock. He was hot during the first question, and you asked another question, and he was hot during that one, and you asked another question. Excuse me. Within 3 questions, it should have been established that he was hot, and there's no caught off guard on your heels factor at that stage. You know what you're heading into. So again, I love you. You're standing up for the media. You're standing up for me in this case. This is a major drop the ball moment for me, for the media, including myself. I tried to get to it. I didn't get to it in time. I left that opening. And Ken, I've been in enough. Listen, John Cooper did this one year in the playoffs in 2015. Right. Where he did that. He answered one question. It went to go to the next person, but there was a strange delay, and he turned and he jumped. I know that when coaches are hot, they want the first opportunity they can get to get off the stage. So you have to act fast in those situations. So I don't know. I'm not letting the rest of the media off the hook. The only media member who did his job post game in the coach's scrum today, people, and let it be known, is Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press.
My point was that in that situation in Vegas, I would have liked to have been a little bit quicker on the draw also, but I also think that Rick had one message to give, and that was it. And
Rick
wouldn't have mattered. That was a one and done situation. So I'm not saying it's apples to apples, but I've been in that situation where I meant to lean for the mic quicker, and it was too late because the coach was finished. So that's all I meant.
I know exactly what you're talking about with Rick Bowness. Rick Bowness did that, and I've talked about it on this podcast before, and I actually admire it when players do it. Like, sometimes you're done, and when you're done, if you answer your question and say, okay, thanks, and walk off, you're controlling your exit, right? And sometimes that exit's a little early, and I wouldn't be happy if a player or a coach exercised that over and over again and kept leaving questions on the table. That's not what Rick Bowness did. Rick Bowness always stood up for it. Every once in a while, if Rick Bowness's message is just what it was in that game, which I thought was a franchise-altering appearance in front of the media, he did everything that he set out to do in that. He had the effect that he wanted to have. Right. I'm okay with Rick taking one time where he's like, and that's it, I'm done, I'm out. This wasn't one of those cases. If another question would have been coming, Scott Arniel would have handled all those questions. Scott Arniel doesn't duck questions. Scott Arniel was given an out today. That is more on the media than, 97% on the media and maybe 3% on it. I think he knew that I was turning to try and ask a question when he was walking off the stage. But once someone starts walking off the stage, they have every right to continue off the stage.
For sure. Anyway. And for context, I mean, Scott Arniel has not had a post-game presser that lasted 68 seconds before. So again, there's, benefit of the doubt on that same front as what you talk about with Rick, right? I mean, it's kind of rare.
Yeah. So here someone says, Leslie says, how is this not ducking questions? And I don't know. I think we've kind of handled this. I have no doubt about it that Scott Arniel was not would have gone on to answer any question that would have been asked. I can tell you what it looks like in the room. There's a whole bunch of chairs, and once upon a time when the media was a lot healthier, all those chairs would have been filled, and now there's mostly empty chairs. There's a handful of journalists, and what happens is the microphone sits on the chairs until someone picks it up to ask a question. Ken had the first microphone. There's 2 microphones. Ken grabbed the one microphone for ask the first things. I saw that it was sitting behind me in a row. There was one person behind me. I'm not going to get into who was there, but there was a number of journalists sitting in behind the microphone. And at some point I had assumed because it was back there that someone was going to grab for it. I was going to, hop into the queue at some point. When I turned and saw no one I looked forward thinking that there was another question coming. When I felt the pause, I realized what was happening, and I turned and I looked and I saw the mic going there. At that point, if you're Scott Arniel, all you see is a whole bunch of journalists who have no, like, when someone wants to ask a question, they're engaged, they're doing this, just a whole bunch of people looking at him basically with the look of, I've got nothing. I turn and see it's happening. By that point, he's walking off the stage. As I dive for the microphone, he's not necessarily seeing it, but we get it. We understand the rules of engagement. It's like a fish on the hook. If you let the fish off the hook and you see him swimming away from the boat, that fish is under no obligation to turn around and swallow the hook all over again. So I definitely don't want this coming across as Scott Arniel trying to duck out on this thing. Again, this was a failure on the media. Everyone in the media not named Ken Wiebe in this situation.
Well, what else caught your attention from the game? Anything? I mean, I guess
before the game, let's just close this out. Why, Ken, do you think that this is something that Scott Arniel's kind of come close to this before, and this is not Rick Bowness scorched earth, basically calling his team right out, but I'm trying to think off the top of my head of more scathing rebuttals from a coach towards his team. This has got to be the biggest one that we've seen from Scott Arniel. There's probably a couple that come close to that from Rick Bono. Okay, there you go. That's a good one.
I think there were two actually last year.
I don't think we ever saw
more scathing than others.
I don't think we ever saw one like this from
Paul.
And beyond that, did we? I was not here to cover.
Claude Noel.
Yes.
I mean, there were more kind of good-natured, kind of not good-natured, but the delivery was more in you wouldn't have looked at it as a pissed off delivery like this one was, I guess.
Yeah. So why now, Ken?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think that it's, I mean, we've been talking about this, for several weeks, and we've talked about this on the last show, how even though the Jets were 6 back, you correctly predicted by the time the game was going to be played that they were 8 out. And I think today was almost one of it's not we've been talking about belief all the time. And Sean, if you're a player, if you're a coach, if you're a member of the coaching staff, you have to have belief until you're mathematically eliminated. But I think today was another one of the realizations of just how tough the battle is. We had talked about it. I mean, you can shine up the numbers however way you want, but even by going 5-1-2, the Jets made up 3 points of ground. And today, when you lose outright, by the time the Jets play in New Jersey on Tuesday, they could be double digits out of the second wildcard spot. And Sean, as positive a demeanor as a team wants to put out there, double digit deficit with 31 games left is an awfully big ask. And I think there's something, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that the players are quitting after today. That's not the mood that I got from either Dylan DeMello or Cole Koepke or Scott Arniel for that matter. But I think that the frustration lies in the fact that it felt like some of the missed opportunities kind of just piled up today. For Scott Arniel. That's my interpretation of it.
Yeah. And so I don't know. There's been far, far, far sloppier games played by the Winnipeg Jets earlier this year than that one. Opportunities. To me, it's a timeliness thing. Like I think that the Winnipeg Jets, and it's funny because we've seen it in the chat room. We've seen it from a lot of other people. I think the Winnipeg Jets had, and probably do, a real belief in themselves that they could come back and they could win this thing. And just to make things clear, if the Winnipeg Jets win their next game, I'm assuming because San Jose and the LA Kings will have 2 games in hand, they're going to win at least one of those games. It's going to end up being that after, because remember we talked about this, after game 42, 40 games left in each 10-game block. In order for them to come back and get to the playoffs, they're going to have to win 7 of 10. They're going to have a 700 points percent. Well, if they win their next game, it's basically going to, after the first 10-game block, gain them 3 points. In a 10-game block, if you gain 3 points in every 10-game block, that gets you to the playoffs by 1 point, if that math holds up and stays true, right? So I do think that the Winnipeg Jets were thinking, okay, here we go. We're showing ourselves. We can be that 700 team. We can get there. And they had a lot of belief. And I think this is a game tonight that I don't think it's anywhere near their worst game of the season. I think there's a lot of games that Arneal could have blown up after. But this one, I think, is the one where it happens because it's basically now or never for this message. We haven't left ourselves any time to give things away, to make a wrong play at the wrong time of a 1-1 game. There's just zero room for error. And so I'm going off now and I'm pissed off and I'm calling out this game in an extreme fashion because at this stage, there's no other time for this, because if we give 3-4 games away down the stretch in this fashion, that'll be enough that we will not be able to make it. I just see it as a last-ditch effort for a team that believes that it's going to make the playoffs when the numbers tell us they should not believe that. The general manager, the management of this team should definitely be looking at the numbers and crunching them. That's their job, and realizing that this is not a likelihood, not even close to a likelihood that they'll make the playoffs. But if you're the coach and you're trying to affect the players and trying to get them to do something amazing, they definitely weren't amazing tonight. And him yelling at them, in my opinion, not yelling, but going off on them, is his way of saying nothing less than amazing is going to do here. So you give me less than amazing, and this is the response that you're going to get. That's my take on it. Hey, we've got Sam Cosentino, who we can jump in to the show here and get his take on the whole thing. Let's bring in the Scarf, who called the game here tonight. Good to see you, Sammy. Looking good, my man.
Hello, gents.
I'm interested in your take right off the hop of, I'm sure you heard the comments following the game by Scott Arneal. Were you surprised to see that kind of heated of a response and his analogy of the game being a pond hockey game? Did you see that at all?
Oh, I mean, for the first 40 minutes, I don't think anyone saw much of anything, to be honest with you. And for both sides, and I would say that extended probably 5 or 6 minutes into the third period. So, I mean, you're looking at basically a 1-1 game for the most part. And then Detroit just kind of stays with it, and then they get some things done. What I would say is, I don't know if it deserved the kind of commentary after, but sometimes coaches, it's one of two things. You're either so emotional after a game because like you're looking towards the dark side instead of the good side, or you are doing it with a message and a plan to move forward that whatever it is that you've seen can no longer happen. So I'm not sure which side of the fence he was on. I wasn't there to witness it other than what I was able to see in writing. But listen, guys, like it is what it is. So, you can sit there and say, well, we're going to win 7 out of 10 and we're going to do this and do that. But there's nothing in the first 52 games, which is more than half a season, that says that the Jets can do that. That's just what the numbers bear. And so the only thing that would give me some sort of hope would be, we have a Hart and a Vezina guy who has yet to play to the best of his abilities. And if he gets back to playing to the best of his abilities, then maybe you got a shot. But again, in the game since he's been back, other than the 5-1 win against Washington on the night he came back, there hasn't been enough to support him, and he hasn't done enough to steal games just by himself. And so when those two things are happening on a continuous basis, and then you have an inability to score goals, that's a pretty tough recipe to try and think you're going to make the playoffs, where pretty much everybody is, except for maybe 1 or 2 teams, are out.
So to back up what Sammy's saying here and back up a lot of what we've talked about on this podcast the last couple of years, the idea of Hellebuyck being the beneficiary of great systematic play over the last number of years, and now kind of being the victim of a breakdown in that. Some of the numbers we crunched tonight are that the Winnipeg Jets are 22nd in the league when it comes to allowing tipped shots or tipped goals, right? They rank 22nd, so they're down near the bottom, and they are 31st in the league when it comes to allowing screened goals. The whole idea of this is Sammy makes a good point, and we haven't seen that Connor Hellebuyck just go out and do amazing, crazy things. But the degree of difficulty has gone way, way up. He's not seeing the puck as much. We didn't get to dive into this much, but a really fascinating theory pre-game, Sam, from Scott Arniel, who said he thinks the league started looking at how to attack Connor Hellebuyck differently after that Colorado series 2 years back, where they just, would throw the puck to the front of the net, get the traffic, all those kind of things. And he really did believe. Now, it's hard to believe considering last year he won a Vezina Trophy and he was the Hart Trophy winner. But the suggestion to me, and Sam, you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, was almost that teams have kind of figured out a way to attack Connor Hellebuyck's weakness, and we saw it in the playoffs last year. We saw it being effective in the playoffs last year, and that's rolled over. There's been enough of a book on it that it seems teams this year are attacking Connor Hellebuyck in a different way, and his take on it, the Jets aren't doing a good enough job to keep that from happening.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, instead of one guy being at the net front, there's two or three, and if they're not the net front, they're at the net side. You think about the two goals that kind of popped up. The one where Confer was hacking at it down at the crossbar, and then the Raymond goal, like goals that Hellebuyck's deep in the net, puck goes up in the air, can't really find it, but you got 4 or 5 bodies there, and eventually it comes down either in the net or right to the net side where someone can bang it in. So I would say that for sure that the league has made an adjustment and probably taken what Colorado did last year in particular. But I also think that maybe, did he come back too early? It was at least a week or 10 days earlier than everyone expected. Is there something that's still bothering him there? When you see the numbers change this drastically, you question everything. So is it the defense is not as good? Is there not enough zone time possession for the Jets to keep them away from Hellebuyck? Is it a couple of pieces that are missing from last year? Is it Pionk, Miller, and Fleury all being out? Guys who all had, well, save for Miller, but Pionk and Fleury had significant contributions last year. Is it that the league's figured him out? Is it that he came back too early? Is it that maybe he's just not having a good year? So there's a lot of different things that come into play there. To pinpoint one specific answer is difficult. But having said that, the bar was set last year, and it has been set the last couple of years for a guy who's won Vezinas and for a guy who has won the Hart, that the expectation now and the bar is set that that's the level he has to play at. And when he doesn't get to that level, then there starts to be questions. For me, I would say that he hasn't been to that level near enough. Has he on some nights? Sure. And are those other things contributing factors? Sure. But my expectation is a Hart winner every now and then, and probably more often this year than not, has to go and flat out steal a game.
Yeah.
And we just haven't seen that.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny you were talking about the bar being set. Someone today was talking to me about their suit and like wearing. It was Jeff Hamilton, who is back on the beat here, and we'll have him on the show some point here. But he was asking about the dress code upstairs, and he'd said, "I'm probably asking the worst guy. Frankie and the boys would never let you get to below a certain level here." So he said, "Use that one for your Vittorio Rossi today." So I'm doing that for Hammy, who had said Renny wouldn't even know what it's like to dip below the highest of standards, and of course not, because I get taken care of by Frankie and the boys down at Vittorio Rossi, which you should too. Head on down to Corden Avenue, walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you up right. Ken, can you give Sweet Lou a shout out?
You bet. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
Come on.
All right, Sammy, I'm going to talk about scoring or lack thereof for the
Yeah.
Winnipeg Jets. But before I do, I'm going to tell the folks at home they can score a great rate with Cambrian Credit Union. Getting a mortgage doesn't have to throw you off your game. While you focus on home sweet home, our friends at Team Cambrian Credit Union take care of the mortgage part with their low rates. Whether you're looking for a new home, renewing, or making the switch, Cambrian is your mortgage MVP. They can help make the next season of your mortgage path easier and help save you money. Now, that is what we call a win. Head to cambrian.mb.ca/rates for more. Okay, I can assure you what you were seeing tonight when it came to 5-on-5 generation, Sam, in my eyes, I think Ken would probably go there as well, is very common from what we've seen from the Winnipeg Jets the last number of games whose scoring output is low, whose 5-on-5 play or scoring is near non-existent until tonight, who don't generate a lot of shots. I'm wondering from your perspective what you saw from the Jets tonight when it comes to the lack of scoring and the lack of generating offense.
So, I think it's the speed thing that comes back, right? I don't think that there's any team in the league that's worried that, like when you watch Detroit, especially in the third period, started to get some rush chances. I don't know if there's that much of a threat for Winnipeg on rush chances. So now what you can do is a couple of things. You can either just kind of, force them to dump the puck in, which they do, and say, come and get it. Are we going to beat you to it? Because we think we can beat you to it. So we're going to force some dump-ins by clogging up neutral ice, standing up at our blue line, dump it in and go get it. And when you have defensemen that are fairly mobile, like what, Detroit has, guys can go back there. Sandin Pellet can go back there. Obviously, Moritz Seider can do it. Ben Sherrod, he's been around a long time. He can do it. To go back and you avoid that first wave of the forecheck. And so when that happens, your zone time is down. Your ability to create shots goes down. Your ability to get any net front presence goes down because everyone's trying to chase the puck and get possession of it, first of all. So I do think when I look at that, it becomes very difficult when you can take away, when you don't have to worry about one element, and that's being the rush. Okay. So how do you combat that? Well, that's obviously for coach to figure out, whether it's stretch passes, stretch the zone, whatever it is you're going to try and do, that you're not always dumping pucks in because you can't always be first to it. Now, there were times when that did happen, and then there was some sustained zone time when Winnipeg was able to get touches, or even after the first Detroit touch, we're able to get on them quick enough for them to turn it back over and keep it in the offensive zone. I'm looking at a team now that, you look at less than 20 shots in each of the last two games. I don't know what the shot total was there tonight, but not 26. A lot of high quality stuff. A lot of stuff right into the crest. So yeah. I don't know. The way I look at it is, obviously Scott Arniel felt the same way. Put Velarde back up with Connor Scheifele, moved Iafallo back down with Taves and Perfetti. And there was a time there for about a week or 10 days where you thought, okay, now we found some balance, and we're not just going to rely on that top line to score 48, 50% of our goals. We have a little bit more depth to it. To be honest with you, I thought the best line of the game was the Kepke,
Kepke, Pearson, and Barron.
Yeah. I thought they were the best line in the game.
Agreed.
Like, you look in that first period, Pearson makes a couple of really good passes to the net front that Kepke just can't get his stick on. If he does, they score. And then obviously Kepke ended up scoring the lone goal. I thought they were their best line. And on any given night, with all due respect to that trio, that should not be the Winnipeg Jets' best line.
Yeah. Just quickly, Sammy, I mean, I know you were bullish on him the year he was drafted and slipped in the draft. I mean, obviously Shane Wright's name has come up this week with the fourth period report from David Pagnotta. Mm-hmm. The Jets are obviously one of those teams that has been looking for a 2C. Yes, I understand right now, Shane Wright is playing in more of a 3C role. Would that be a player that you think would be a fit here? Depending on cost of acquisition and all those things, could he be a solution to that job, depending on what the price is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would. I mean, it's worth a try. Let's just put it that way. So you're getting a controllable player still. You're getting a player who clearly has something to prove. You're getting a player who kind of grew up in that system in its infancy, and now it doesn't seem like it's working. So he's a guy you take a chance on. I mean, again, listen, there's no secret. Winnipeg has its challenges bringing players here, and when players don't have options, that's a good time to go and try and get them. You know, is he a perfect specimen? No. Is he going to be a 2C? Well, that's still to be determined. But I do remember some talk during his draft year where scouts use this terminology a lot. Well, he's going to be a better player for a second or his third team. And Shane Wright might fit very well into that category, right? Because you come in there and you're staring at the Montreal Canadiens. You not only drop out of first, but you go all the way to fourth. Yeah. And then you take kind of the slow boat to get there. And then you get there and you're okay last year. And now you take a step back again this year. So, you know, there's a lot of pressure put on that player with Seattle having drafted that high. And he just hasn't performed to the level of where his draft was. So it leads to a bunch of questions. You know, was he really that good to start with? Is he a guy who just hasn't found it? Will he be better in a second as third team? You know, and the cost of acquisition, as much as Seattle's thrown him out there, I'm like, what could it cost you? I don't think it'd be a huge cost to take a chance on a player like that, someone you have a little bit of control over. So he would be a guy I'd be looking at, but it'd be interesting to see what the return that Seattle wants.
Right.
I can tell you this, Ken, that would no doubt give the Winnipeg Jets, regardless of the player, a bit of a Pristine Roofing wake-up call, a little bit of a different injection into the lineup. You know what that means. Time to give North Ed Richter Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Give your home the Pristine Roofing and siding wake-up call. You will be glad that you did. I can also say at this stage, I don't know about you, Ken. I don't know about you, Sam, but Kevin Cheveldayoff should be kind of looking all around everywhere for whatever he can do to kind of either move to get assets or bring guys in. The stay pat approach seems to, in my mind, we talked about it on the show, Ken, a quarter of the way through the season, we thought it had run its course, but it most definitely seems to have run its course. They need to be looking all over the place, just like you won't have to look all over the place for the people who take care of all your prescription needs, your supplemental needs, your health food needs. You can go straight to Myers Drugs. They'll take care of all of it for you, and as you know, they will deliver anywhere in the city, so go give them a try. Ken, I did want to say this. What happened in your mind? The success that the Jets had, those four games in a row that they won, which is now really starting to look quite a bit like fool's gold in that they've now lost 4 of their last 5 games. Have they been generating points? Yes. Overall, if you look at it as an entire body of 9 games, 12 points in 9 games is pretty darn good. Like I'd said, if they win their next game, their 10-game block puts them on pace to reclaim the playoffs, based on the kind of artificial line that we set. But one of the things that I was wondering if it was a bit of fool's gold was when they were winning those games when they were getting a lot of depth scoring and when they were, putting up a lot of goals, the vast majority of it were shots from the point that were getting knocked in. Jonathan Toews had like 4 of them. That seems to have entirely dried up. Do you have any thoughts on why?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, the Jets went through that 5-game block where they scored 20 goals, Sean, and you're right. They had a ton of load of highs, tips, rebounds. Taves had 3 goals that looked, were all within a foot of the blue paint. One of them was in the blue paint behind the goalie. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Our team's taking that away. I think Detroit did a nice job of taking away the points. They're
fronting the puck.
Josh Morrissey did a great job. He had 1 dance in the first period, but after that play was not available to him. So, Logan Stanley joined 1 time, had a nice chance. It might have been wide. It was stopped by Gibson. But, yeah, I mean, they're just not generating enough. And Sam, to your point, I mean, Jets used to be deadly off the rush. They're barely getting any rush chances.
Yeah.
Right? That's a bunch of things. That last year, again, not to say that it should be like last year, but they disrupted play in the neutral zone so much with back pressure and got things going north that they had tons of zone time. And they don't get enough cycle shift opportunities. They're not getting enough, second chance opportunities. They're not getting to the net enough. They're not spending, Nino Niederreiter, I've said this before. He used to live around the blue paint. It was his office. Like, not just us talked about it. He talked about it. So, I mean, they're in an interesting spot again because, I mean, Sam, to your point, I mean, that Taves line gave them some balance. But, I mean, I saw someone in the chat room said break up the top line. Well, they've been broken up for 2 weeks. They might have to go back to the top line because they're not getting anything else or not enough from throughout their lineup. So it's super interesting, Sam, just obviously because we have you. You've seen Cole Perfetti for a long time. Obviously, we know the high ankle sprain is about the toughest injury for a guy who isn't exactly fleet of foot to begin with. Anything that you're seeing from him and what's going to take for him to get going? I know he scored in the last game after a great play by Taves, but what do you see from Perfetti and what does he need to do to, I mean, we know his word processor is still always working, but in order for him to get going a little bit more, what do you think he needs to do?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think, having left him on that line would have continued to get him going, and maybe Scott O'Neill goes back to that, in the next game when the road trip starts. But I think he was just starting to come. And again, like, we don't know how much that upper ankle thing is still bothering. I've from everything I've heard about that injury is that it just stays with you the whole year. And again,
by fall, he's going to be feeling 100%, basically. Before then, maybe through the Olympic break, it could help, Sam, but I don't know that he's back to full.
Yeah, and that, what can you do? You can go home and you can continue to rehab twice a day, or stay off it, or do whatever it is you got to do. But I like him with Taves and I like him with Velarde. And it was interesting. Our panel in the pregame was talking about, like, none of those guys are really fleet of foot, so they have to find a way to get entry into the zone, and then that's when they can do their best work, right? I mean, Velarde along the wall or behind the net he's brilliant. You're not getting pucks from him there. And Perfetti, if he can come out from the corner after, it's been retrieved, he can do a lot of things. He can give you that low to high that you talked about. He can get to the net front maybe for a shot, or he can find whoever's open, someone sneaking down from the point or someone on the back post there. So he has the opportunity and the talent to do a number of different things. Having said that, he still doesn't look to me like he's able to do what he wants to do. And for a guy that as you mentioned, is already not quite fleet of foot, he needs every inch he can get. So I just think with him, it's just more of a health thing than it is anything else. And I don't know if we'll get to see the full Monty this year or not, but if we do, we're going to see it after the Olympic break.
Okay, time for us to get rolling into some of the awards here. Let's start with the Johnston Group Got You Covered Play of the Game. Ken, what do you got?
Not a lot of great candidates here, Sean. It didn't prevent the goal ultimately, but in real time, it prevented the goal. Logan Stanley had a really important blocked shot, but it came like 12 seconds before Confer got his first goal. So it's sort of a diminished Got You Covered, but in the spirit of the Got You Covered, I think it was kind of the best of the unheralded plays in a game that didn't feature a whole lot of them for the Jets.
Yeah, again, it just to Sammy's point, it was kind of like the game that almost never existed for the first two periods until Detroit blew this one wide open. But I think you got to kind of nailed that one there, Ken. It's about as good as it's going to get on a night like tonight. That's your Johnston Group Got You Covered Play of the Game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And that brings us to our hashtag the keg save of the game. And I don't know that there were a lot of, candidates for this one as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hellebuck made a really nice save on Alex DeBrincat, but again, it wasn't a plentiful or a busy game. It was like, Sammy, to your point, I think that the Crests got kind of a bit more of a workout, a bit more of a workout at both ends than a lot of acrobatics at either end. But I do remember one DeBrincat save on, a shot that was stopped by Hellebuck. So, and again, I think there was Gibson took that one off the melon that I also thought was a pretty good save. I can't remember who took the shot, but it kind of caught him by surprise there. And I almost wondered that if they might need a little concussion spotter action going on there after that one. It was a pretty heavy clip.
Yeah. He looked good though. I mean, he wasn't tested tonight, but what I was seeing from him, and hey, this is that you've got that confidence when your team's playing like that around you. We saw it from Hellebuck last year. Your team plays really, really good around you, limits chances. You don't have to worry about backdoors or the puck moving around too much. You get to have confidence. You get to have swagger. I thought there was a pretty obvious case of swagger after the penalty taken by Barron, and he heads out to center ice. Great camera shot, eh, Sam? You have it where he's like, come on, he says to him, and he's calling him out. But like in that moment, I was kind of thinking, I don't know if you were Sam or Ken, but I was thinking, is it necessary for him to go out and do this? Like, it felt to me like a moment where you could be giving the other team a spark by just taking it to, like, let the guy take his penalty and go to the box. You don't need to come and chirp him on the way to the box. But in retrospect, it's a confident goalie. And what did we say on the broadcast? He's won now 17 of his last 19 games. Like,
that's crazy.
We're talking about Connor Hellebuck has he lost 4 straight again? So Connor Hellebuck lost 10 straight, then he won 3 straight, now he's lost 4 straight again. Like the numbers, at some point, the numbers don't lie. When you're winning 17 of 19, you're doing something right. When you're losing now, what is that, 14 of 17? Things are tough. Things are piling up. Definitely the winner of the Sean Reynolds Award on this night was John Gibson. But Ken's got the hashtag keg at the game. Doesn't matter what we think, though. Matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag, the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And our winner from our last show, that would be Cowboy 529. Cowboy with a K. Yeah. Cowboy with a K 529. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me your email. I'll have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. Gentlemen, anything to say before we get going?
Yeah, one more quick one for Sammy. Just again, you've seen Logan Stanley in junior. You've seen his trajectory. Obviously, rubber going to have to meet the road here. Do you think he extends? What do you think he makes? What do the Jets need to do? Sean and I are both in agreement. If they can't sign him, you got to move him. Where do you stand, and what do you see the Rays looking like potentially?
Well, the thing is, I mean, he's the devil and the devil is oftentimes better than the one you don't. Like, you've drafted this guy, you've grown up with him, you've seen him through injury, and now you're starting to see what I thought he was going to be maybe 4 years earlier, 5 years earlier.
Right.
He's handling the puck with confidence. His reach is outstanding. He's rubbing guys out. He's getting involved in scrums. He's firing the puck. He's doing a lot of really good things right now. Those guys have a lot of value, right? Teams are clamoring for that type of player. So, if someone felt really confidently that not only they could get him and maybe extend him, then you're probably looking at a decent return. If you're thinking that, well, he's not someone we're looking at, well, then, I just think he's going to be more valuable to the Jets than what he would get back on the trade market. I guess that's the best way for me to phrase it.
That's a
and
pretty.
So what does that number look like? Well, listen, that's an entirely different question. But if I could look at a guy who, hey, you had a great year, looks like you're on the come see here. How about we do 4 years at $16 million, and that will allow you some time in the back end, maybe to go and find another deal if it doesn't work out here, or it's not too long of a commitment for us as a franchise for a guy who's been injured. But it's also a situation for the player that, hey, I'm going to give back, some time to the organization that's seen me through injuries and drafted me. And so also something like that, I think works. But again, the devil is better than the one you don't. Like, how do you replace him? And you can look at it, okay, he's on the left side, so he's got to play in the third pairing. Or maybe you say he's a 4 guy, or a 5 guy who's going to get more minutes than your 6-7 guys. Like, I guess it really depends on how the Jets feel about what his usage looks like going forward, and if the salary is going to be commensurate to that usage.
Sam, from what you've seen in the past with a player like this, who's basically been, 10 years gone from his draft year and has missed out on a lot of the window of making the money that NHLers, like, we know they get in at some point. They have to look at this as like their one shot to kind of put the money in the bank they need to from this career. How in your experience, driven as a player like Logan Stanley to kind of just go and get out to make sure that he gets the deal to try and earn back some of the money he probably feels like he should have had already?
And that's fair. And listen, like that's what the players' rights are. And in a salary cap world where the cap's going up, there is likely to be something available to him. And that's why I suggest maybe kind of a shorter midterm thing that is good for both the player and the club, that shows loyalty to both sides, but also says, hey, you know, from a team perspective, you've earned that right now after 3 years to go and do something if you continue to play this well. And from a player perspective to say, hey, you guys been taking pretty good care of me here for a while. We're gonna reciprocate on our end and give you a little bit of security and let you put some money in your jeans, but also give you the opportunity in the back end to see what's out there if you want to do that. So yeah. I just feel like this is the guy you drafted and developed. Do you want him to go somewhere else and become a 35, 40-point guy playing in a second pairing and PKing because of his reach and playing heavy and protecting your goalie and getting in the odd scrap? Like, I don't know if you'd want to see him doing it for someone else, because I think he's on par to continue to play this way.
Before we do go, Sam, we would be remiss if we did not tackle draft talk, as Infinity Comet says here. So I don't want to give everything away. You had a conversation with someone from the Detroit Red Wings staff today. Fun little conversation going back and forth. And the two of you got talking World Juniors and guys that you saw. I was fascinated by a comment that you were making about the number of first rounders that you were talking about this year. Winnipeg Jets look determined to kind of bump their way up the standings here. But to me, the most likely outcome of that is they push themselves towards the mushy middle. And don't end up getting a playoff spot. They've already, I think, kind of not long ago last in the league. They seem to be leaving that behind. What kind of depth are we looking at in this draft in your mind for the Winnipeg Jets, wherever they end up, that you think that there's a very solid chance that they get a good NHLer? How many draft spots are we talking deep?
I think 10. And what's interesting to me is, like, if I look at three guys in particular here, okay? I'll start with Keaton Verhoff, Western Canadian kid. I'll go to Carson Karls, Western Canadian kid. Daxon Rudolph, Western Canadian kid. All three defensemen who are likely to go in the top 10. And the way things are going right now for the Jets, that's a position that you could see them picking in. Having said that, would that first pick, let's say we're inside the top 10, be better reserved for a player that's going to up the skill level up front? And I think a lot of people would argue that that's the way it should go. So I think they would be in a very interesting quandary if they were to pick somewhere in that 6, 8, 10 range as to what they would be looking for. Because there are a number of forwards. There's some sizable guys. I mean, there's a real hodgepodge of players here. Ethan Belchetz is a guy who's playing in Windsor who's 6'4", 225 pounds. He's someone that people have talked about being very highly regarded. Viggo Bjork is, on the other hand, 5'9", 165 pounds, but played like Braden Point in every situation possible for the Swedes in the gold medal win at the World Juniors. Stenberg, I don't think he'll be available to anyone picking after 2. And if the Jets find themselves in that spot, they would get a hell of a player there too, who could add a ton of skill and grit and two-way play up front. So the point that I want to make, though, like, let's say you move off on Stanley, you're able to acquire an extra first-round pick, you're picking in your own place 9, 10. Well, you're going to have a number of Western Canadian defensemen that I think would be guys that you'd want to have in your fray, as opposed to looking to an American kid, a Russian kid, that sort of thing. So that's what does add a little intrigue, especially for the Jets when it comes to this draft.
Who's your number one right now? We asked Books when he was on. You were just down in St. Paul and Minneapolis. Where are we at with McKenna Stenberg for you, Sammy?
Yeah, I got Stenberg at 1 right now. McKenna's right there, big hat trick there, I guess, 2 nights ago, and putting together a pretty strong second half as you expected coming back from the World Juniors. So it's going to be fun to watch until the end with this group of players. But that's still to be determined. Like, listen, I like Verhoff a lot too.
Yep.
Just look at your big right shot defensemen. Once they get on a team, they don't go anywhere. You know, whether it's Doughty or Carlson or Ekblad, you know, there's a number of guys that we can talk about in that regard. So I think he's still very much in the conversation as well. His showing at the World Juniors wasn't really enough. He was playing 10 minutes a night, got scratched 2 games. By the end of it, I think he started to show what his handles look like and that sort of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see, but there will be, I think, if you're picking inside of 10, a real good impact player for you.
Excellent stuff. Anything to ask before we get going, Ken?
Nope, perfect stuff, Sammy. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you for dinner last night, and turns out the storm might allow us to see you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Unfortunate to hear about the delay, but we're going to make the best of her.
Let's go eat, buddy.
Yeah, good stuff. The Scarf rocking it as always. Kenny rocking it as always. In the chat room bringing it as always. Thank you so much to everybody for joining up here today, being part of the conversation. If you do appreciate the conversations happening in this space, we implore you to appreciate the contributions made by our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Jim Pattison Toyota on Region, Vittorio Rossi, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, Pristine Roofing, Flame and Comfort, Myers Drugs, the Kenny and Renny OGs at the Johnson Group, and of course, the fine folks at the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. Let's reconvene and do this all over again after the next game. We'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.